On this Monday night, out of control. The threat of a new fast-moving wildfire in BC.
We're in a stage 4 drought.
What's igniting the flames? A murderous plot foiled. The woman accused of wanting to assassinate Ukraine's president. Moving migrants. The UK's controversial tactic to repel asylum seekers. And Iron Man.
We are making good stuff.
A Montreal blacksmith's vital role in helping rebuild Notre Dame in Paris.
Global National with Donna Friesen. Reporting tonight, Farah Nasser.
Good evening to you. Thanks for joining us. Long weekend thunderstorms have been a double-edged sword, bringing much-needed rain to parched areas of British Columbia, but also lightning and strong winds intensifying the fire situation there. More than 40 new fires were sparked in BC in the last 24 hours, bringing the total number to more than 400. Most of the new fires have been caused by lightning. But as Heather Yourex-West explains, investigators believe a human-caused fire triggered the urgent evacuation of a 5-day music festival near Princeton last night.
All day Monday, they flew back and forth, planes delivering water to a new fire near Princeton, BC. From the highway Sunday night, it cast an eerie glow. Dangerously close to this outdoor electronic music festival, hundreds in attendance were forced to flee.
We went out there with the Princeton posse, the junior hockey team. We took the bus out there expecting to bring home a busload of people. We only ended up having to bring one back. Everybody else found another ride out of the area.
The wildfire halfway between Princeton and Tulameen was spotted just after 8:30 p.m. Sunday, one of 400 fires now burning across the province.
We have seen an increase in wildfire starts as a result of some lightning activity that affected large parts of the province, both in the north and the south.
Officials say lightning caused 40 new fires between Sunday and Monday. 30 are out of control. But the fire near Princeton is believed to be human-caused, and if convicted, those responsible could face fines and jail time,
as well as any associated cost associated with responding to that wildfire.
While rain in the northwest part of the province is a welcome help, more soaring temperatures are forecast for BC's interior.
Oh, it's been extremely hot. It's dry. We're in a stage 4 drought here, which is one step away from the worst drought condition we can get. So the rivers are pretty low, lakes are pretty low, which adds to the fuel load.
A warning that even with so much of this province on fire, there is still plenty of tinder dry fuel left to burn. Heather Yourex-West, Global News.
In Southern California, 3 people have been killed after 2 firefighting helicopters collided midair last night. One of the choppers was able to land safely. The other crashed, killing the pilot and 2 firefighters on board. The crash sparked a small brush fire, which has been put out. The National Transportation Safety Board is investigating. The fires in California are the result of wide-ranging severe weather across the U.S., from tornadoes in several states to historic flooding up in Alaska. Right now, 120 million Americans are preparing for intense storms on the East Coast, while the South bakes in extreme heat. Safeeya Pirani has more.
Wicked winds turned devastating in Illinois overnight, mowing down homes and trees, with reported tornado sightings there and in Colorado.
That is a tornado funnel.
Now, the U.S. National Weather Service is warning Washington, Baltimore, and much of the Appalachians towards Tennessee face a level 4 of 5 risk of damaging winds, hail, and rain. The federal government even authorized an early 3 p.m. departure of its employees ahead of the storm.
There goes.
In Juneau, Alaska, historic glacial flooding triggered evacuations. Dramatic video shows a home being swept away.
But what came to a surprise to us was the amount of water that came out of the basin. We never saw this amount of water at once come out of the basin.
As millions of Americans across the continental U.S. experience some form of extreme weather or disaster, climate change is playing a part in many of these events, including the severe underlying heat sweltering the South, where alerts stretch from California to Florida. Off Key West, researchers are rushing to save the vulnerable coral reef.
So by relocating these corals to deeper, cooler waters, we hope that they'll have an increased chance of making it through the coming weeks.
Back on land, the heat and humidity has killed hundreds of livestock in several states. And in Texas, those temperatures are causing peak energy demand.
Like extremely hot here in Houston,
with little sign of it letting up in August. Safeeya Pirani, Global News.
Severe weather is also affecting South Korea, where the World Scout Jamboree is now being relocated. About 36,000 participants from 158 countries, including Canada, are being moved away from the path of a tropical storm expected to make landfall Wednesday. The event was already being criticized over poor conditions in extreme heat, causing hundreds of scouts to fall ill and others to leave prior to today's evacuation order. The Jamboree is still on until the 12th at a soon-to-be-determined location. In Ukraine, a woman has been detained in connection with an apparent plot to attack President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, according to the government. Ukraine's security service claims the foiled plan is linked to reconnaissance work related to Zelenskyy's visit to the Mykolaiv region. Last month, the suspected operative has not been identified. As Goomansingh reports, it's not the first time the president has come under serious threat.
It was business as usual Monday for the Ukrainian president, but he did mention on his Telegram page that he was briefed on the struggle against traitors in Ukraine. The country's security service spokesperson says on the eve of a visit to the Mykolaiv region, a Russian informant was trying to collect intelligence on the president. These images are from Volodymyr Zelenskyy's visit to Mykolaiv last month, but it's not clear if this was the trip the alleged Russian operative was using to learn the locations, times, and routes the president would be traveling. Officials shared this obscured image of the woman in question, but did not release her name. They were tipped off about her and launched additional security measures, including counter-surveillance. Plots against Zelenskyy are not new. The secretary of the National Security Defense Council told Global News last year that on 4 occasions he had to tell the president about possible assassination attempts.
His reaction is annoyed. Oh, again, he says, but I have to tell him.
It's not known how many more attempts there have been since that interview, but the president travels a lot more now and is more visible compared to the early days of Russia's full invasion. What hasn't changed is the toll the war is taking on families. Ukrainian officials say one woman died when Russia hit this building in the Kherson region early Monday. Ukraine, as a part of its counteroffensive, is fighting to reclaim recently lost territory and long-occupied regions like Crimea. On Sunday, it hit 2 bridges in that area, including the Chonar Road Bridge. Rob Hubert is a military strategist.
Because you have this overlap between the political and military means, I see this particular element of the war intensifying. This is where there's going to be some very increasing fighting because the stakes are so important for both sides.
With the push to reclaim territory and the foiled assassination attempt, the updating of the motherland statue in Kyiv with the Ukrainian trident serves as a larger-than-life reminder of the need for defense, but also victory. Goomansingh, Global News, London.
Russia is set to evacuate an entire village for the country's first lunar lander mission in nearly half a century. The Lunar 25 lander will launch from a site roughly 5,500 kilometers east of Moscow. Nearby residents will be told to leave on Friday in the rare chance of falling rocket boosters after they separate. The main objective of the mission is to develop soft landing technologies and research the internal structure of the moon. The airspace over Niger closed. Coming up, what the country's coup leaders are trying to prevent, plus the UK's new controversial way of deterring migrants. Coup leaders in Niger have closed the country's airspace until further notice, citing concerns of military intervention from neighboring countries. A deadline to reinstate the democratically elected president expired over the weekend. Coup leaders rejected the ultimatum set by a bloc of West African nations that had threatened military action. A spokesperson for the junta said the armed forces are ready to defend the country if necessary. The flight tracking website Flight Radar 24 showed no aircraft in Niger's airspace on Monday. The countries will meet again on Thursday to discuss the political situation. The UK, like other countries, is dealing with a record number of asylum seekers, and it has turned to a controversial new measure to deal with the crisis. Authorities have started putting people on board a housing barge in the south coast of England. The government says it's being done to save money and to make the country less attractive to migrants. But human rights groups say the barge is unsafe. The UK's Firefighters Union has called it a death trap. And as Redmond Shannon reports, some say it could also re-traumatize refugees.
These were the first asylum seekers boarding the Bibi Stockholm, a 90-metre barge destined to be a floating home for 500 men in 220 rooms. Some local Brits don't want it near their neighbourhoods. Others say what's happening here shouldn't be happening anywhere.
The way that the government has been running their asylum policy is set up to target these people and to scapegoat them.
There are more than 50,000 asylum seekers in British hotels, costing UK taxpayers $10 million a day. Last year saw a record number of people using small boats to cross the English Channel. 45,000. The British government says its barge plan is intended to deter more from following.
What it sends is a forceful message that there will be proper accommodation, but not luxurious. Luxurious hotel accommodation has been part of the pull, I'm afraid.
The barge is central to Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's Stop the Boats policy, as are efforts to send asylum applicants to Rwanda. And according to new reports, the tiny Ascension Island in the middle of the South Atlantic. The Rwanda plan is stalled in the courts. Human rights groups say it and the barge are inhumane, re-traumatizing and ineffective when people are fleeing insecurity and poverty.
Their own research tells them why people cross, and it's because A, they can't get visa access, and B, they have family or links and ties in the UK.
The UK, like Canada, is dealing with a housing crunch alongside a backlog of asylum cases. Currently, more than 100,000 applications in Canada. With asylum seekers now sleeping in Toronto churches, Mayor Olivia Chow has asked residents to offer up affordable rental units.
People are opening up their hearts. They're opening up their wallets. We're asking the federal government that you also need to do the same.
By Monday afternoon, just 15 people had boarded the barge, with last-minute legal challenges blocking about 20 other transfers. And planned barges in other UK locations face more objections too. Sunak hopes this is the boat to help stop the boats, but achieving that appears to be far from smooth sailing. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Still ahead, the legal battle over the handling of evidence linked to former U.S. President Donald Trump. Three years after George Floyd's murder sparked a reckoning over racism and police brutality, a former Minneapolis officer has been sentenced on state charges. A Minnesota judge sentenced Tu Tao to 57 months in prison for his role in the murder. He was convicted in May of aiding and abetting second-degree manslaughter. He's already serving a 3.5-year prison term from a federal conviction. His new sentence will happen concurrently. Tao held back bystanders while former officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on Floyd's neck in May of 2020. He testified he was merely serving as a human traffic cone, but the judge found his actions objectively unreasonable, saying Tao had a duty to intervene. There are more legal troubles for Donald Trump over his third indictment related to election interference. After the former U.S. president wrote troubling social media posts over the case, prosecutors filed a protective order to prevent him from releasing or discussing evidence. Today, Trump's team called for the order to lessen its scope to shield only genuinely sensitive materials. As Reggie Cicchini reports, the legal battle could determine what evidence is seen and what is heard in the upcoming case.
Never one to bite his tongue, Donald Trump's defense is focusing on the process and not his legal problems.
So this ridiculous indictment against us, it's not a legal case, it's an act of desperation.
But his words have prosecutors worried. A flurry of vaguely threatening social media posts resulted in the special counsel asking for a protective order on shared discovery. The concern that Trump could spill secrets and influence witnesses.
It's not at all unusual for a judge to rein in a defendant who is going to try to bring this case to the public, essentially try it in the court of public opinion even before it gets inside of a courtroom.
And while it's a common practice, it also leaves room for Trump to claim he's being silenced.
I think in Trump's mind, his legal strategy is his political strategy.
Still, legal experts argue this case is more about speech than conduct. Speech Trump's team says is protected, but also hidden behind a new front line, claiming Trump never directed anyone to do anything illegal and that his comments are merely aspirational.
The First Amendment protects political speech higher than any other speech.
Even once staunch allies of Trump are weary about this new approach.
Well, it's certainly a challenging case, but I don't think it runs afoul of the First Amendment.
Also on the mountain of motions being considered are requests to get the case out of heavily Democratic Washington and away from a judge appointed by Barack Obama.
So if you can't beat him, you persecute him or you prosecute him.
Trump appears to be hinting to his supporters that he can't get a fair trial in Washington, while making no fuss over his Florida case overseen by a judge he appointed.
And still to be determined is whether a ban on cameras in the federal courtroom will be lifted. Trump's legal team and even House Democrats are calling for access, saying that it will allow for the public to better digest the information during the trial and an eventual outcome, while helping to control narratives. Farah?
Reggie Cicchini in Washington. Thank you, Reggie.
The power of Christ compels you!
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Academy Award-winning director William Friedkin has died at the age of 87. Some of his best-known works include The Exorcist, To Live and Die in L.A., and The French Connection, for which he won Best Director. His wife says Friedkin died from a heart failure and pneumonia at his home in Bel Air today.
Hey, Barbie. Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Director Greta Gerwig has called her Barbie movie a feminist film, and now she herself has smashed a glass ceiling. She's become the first female solo director to surpass $1 billion at the global box office, barely 3 weeks in, something the film's star and co-producer Margot Robbie predicted and pitched to Warner Brothers while trying to get the green light for the fantasy comedy, though Robbie admits she thought she was overselling. Forged in fire next, how a Montreal blacksmith is helping restore the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris. Back in 2019, a devastating fire ripped through the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, severely damaging its roof and spire. Since then, experts have been working to reconstruct the historic church, which is now on track to reopen to the public next year. And as Elizabeth Zagalis explains, a Montreal blacksmith is playing a key role in the restoration project.
Tucked away in the Peel Basin sits an old pumping station that was built in 1887. Inside the building, not much has changed since the 19th century.
We are making good stuff which lasts long in time frame, and this is eco-responsible.
Mathieu Colette is the founder of Les Forges de Montréal, which translates to Blacksmiths of Montreal.
I went to France in 1994 to 1998 as an apprentice, and I came back to Quebec in 98 with the idea to create a museum and a school for preserving intangible knowledge of cultural heritage of traditional smithing.
Colette has been doing his trade for more than 30 years, but comes from a long line of blacksmiths.
I'm the fourth generation of André Maltaverne lines of a family, which my master was a third generation. So he teach me what have been lost in France.
Colette uses fire, coals, and traditional methods to make tools from iron and steel. His specialty is axes.
Because I've learned there and I win some prizes, the government of France sometimes need me to go back there.
His skill is so specialized, last year he was asked to help a team of blacksmiths in France recreate axes that were used in the 13th century to build the Notre Dame de Paris Cathedral.
There was a first session in September, a second session in October, and a third session in December. And we had made around 20 axes at each session.
A massive restoration project is currently underway in Paris after a fire in 2019 destroyed the roof and spire of the famous landmark.
They still using the carpenters who are making the timber framing and the red oak of Notre Dame are still using those axes to finish the job.
Here in Montreal, Colette and his team have a passion for showing a younger generation their trade. Every first Sunday of the month, visitors can head to the site and watch Colette in action.
Everyone is welcome to come visit at Les Forges in Montréal and be in touch with that science, which is our history.
Elizabeth Zogalis, Global News, Montreal.
And that's Global National for this Monday night. I'm Farah Nasser. On behalf of our whole crew, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your Monday evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is Buren, Newfoundland and Labrador. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing us your photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Until tomorrow, take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Good night.